So this weekend has, for me, kind of been one of those weekends in ministry where I get to be a part of the circle of life of the sacramental part of our church. Friday involved with a wedding, all right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday involved with funerals. And then, of course, today involved with this beautiful baptism, welcoming Oliver Anthony to be a part of God's holy church. This circle of life, as a deacon, it's just a blessing to be able to be a part of it, to be able to be a part of the people's lives and walking with them, as I always like to say, at the highest points of life and also at the lowest points of life. Trying to, in some way, celebrate, bring healing, maybe bring some peace. Not peace that comes from me, but peace that comes from Jesus. When I look at all these experiences of the circle of life, I truly think about, each one of those moments. And of course, in my life, I've experienced all three. And, these moments aren't moments of, where there's not at least a little bit of fear. I mean, every one of them. I mean, you think about the moments where we celebrate or we remember the loss of someone, through the funeral rites. I mean, that's fearful. It's fearful in the sense that we don't always know how we're going to live without. We don't know what it's going to be like, because our life is a little bit emptier because that loved one of ours isn't there in our life. I mean, there's fear involved with that. How about marriage? I mean, anybody that's married right here, they know that you don't enter into it without just a little bit of fear, all right? I mean, at one moment where you're probably standing at that altar, you're looking at each other and saying, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm sure that there is that moment of fear that exists because, you know what? You're entering into a life where you're saying, look, we're going to walk through thick and thin. We're going to walk through good and bad, health and non-health and challenges, but we're going to do it together. And like I always like to say, hopefully do it until we're pushing up daisies. I mean, there is fear involved in entering into that journey of life. And then baptism, a joyous occasion, a joyous day. And I'm sure Oliver and Teresa, every day you look at that beautiful son of yours and you have that fear. Like we all do. My kids are 19 and above now, and even my 31-year-old, I still have fear for the things he's going through in life and what have you. And, you're just always fearful for that child of yours, Are you going to direct him the right way? Are you going to tell him the right things? Are you going to treat him the right way? Right now, he's so delicate. Am I going to break him? I'm sure there were times, Oliver or Teresa, in the very beginning, you were just so cautious in how you're doing things. Now you're probably tossing them around. You're old, nothing to it. But, there is that fear. I think today's gospel talks a lot about fear in the sense that on that day that John talks about, Easter evening, the friends of Jesus, those that were closest to him, those that knew him so well, knew his story so well. And what does it say? They were hiding because they were afraid. They were afraid of the outside world closing in on them. They were afraid. And then the beautiful thing happens when he has his first appearance there with the 12 or whoever was there in that room. And the first thing he looks at them and he just says, peace be with you. Peace be with you. I can just imagine at that moment, that there had to be, I'm sure there was a lot of wonder. There was a lot of confusion. There was still, oh my gosh, what is happening here? But then to hear Jesus say that, peace be with you. I'm sure at that moment it was just a showering of, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And he continues on, and 3 more times in that particular gathering, and when he gathers with his friends, 2 more times he says it, peace be with you. He's trying to drive that message home. What is that message? That message is very simple. It says, look, you choose me, you believe in me, And I don't care what fear comes your way, I'll bring you that peace. I mean, that truly is what this journey is about. You know, there's nothing that we can face that doesn't bring that moment of peace when we have that belief. I guess then there's that question of that belief. What do we believe? I mean, today is a beautiful story again where Thomas, he gets a bad rap, I think, throughout history because, what is he known as? Not the Apostle Thomas. He's known as the Doubting Thomas. And how would you like to go through life, as the Doubting Thomas? But I don't think it was a doubting in a real negative way. As I always like to say, it's a sense of doubting that he's just trying to understand better. He's trying to take that deeper dive. He wants to know so that he can be completely, ready to go on that mission. Now, I've written about this before and shared this before. Of course, as I get older, I never remember what I say in homilies, okay? I can repeat myself, all right? Henry David Thoreau, a great writer, said, faith has many doubts in her purse. If I cannot doubt, then I shall not believe. Faith has many doubts in her purse. If I cannot doubt, then I shall not believe. You think Henry David Thoreau was saying he doesn't want to believe anything? No. He's saying, I need to ask the questions. Just like Thomas, he needed to ask the questions to better understand. And I always like to look at it in this respect. Faith and theology, our belief in God, it's not like a science. It's not like a math. I know I got a bunch of math teachers in front of me here and a few science teachers and that, but I know in those particular disciplines of education, they try to prove a theory, right? They're coming to an answer. But there's sort of that black and white question, all right, and you get that answer, all right? With theology, with faith, sometimes it's a little bit different. We have to keep asking the questions, and it keeps taking us to a higher level of belief. And I think that's what Thomas was all about. And I can tell you, I have lots of moments where I'm like Thomas. Because a lot of times I see the things that are happening around me. I see the things that are happening in the world. I see the challenges, and I'm thinking, God, really? Really? But then, it's asking the right questions. It's pointing me in the direction where all of a sudden I feel this kind of sense of peace that I understand. Now, today's message is really pointing to one reality of belief of ours, and that Jesus is real. Jesus is real. Now, I love the readings and so forth because it challenges our belief. It challenges us to not just look at this man and say that's all he is a man. A great teacher, Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. I don't know if you know this about Thomas Jefferson. He was, definitely was somebody that, pointed us in the right direction, helped to build this country, helped to, put us on the right path, authored the Declaration of Independence. He kind of wanted to portray Jesus as just a great teacher. He believed in the Christian morality. But he wrote his own Bible. And he cut out all the miracles. He cut out all the supernatural. And all he wanted in there was just the teachings. Because they were good, and they are. To be a Christian, to follow a Christian way of life isn't a bad thing. You look at these people in the early church that the apostles talk about. They took care of each other. They loved each other. They were making sure that nobody was going without. That was the life that they wanted to live. Those were good Christian morals. Do the right thing. Love what is good. Do what is right. And just be humble about it. What Micah tells us. That's all good, but do you think they did that just out of the goodness of their heart? I can tell you that something happened to those people, those followers. And it wasn't just, I want to do the right thing. No, Jesus is real. There's something different about this man. He's just not, a great teacher, but there is so much more. And I think today is truly about that for us. What do we believe? What do you believe? And I know sometimes it's hard because unlike math or science. I can't put a theory up here or a problem up here or I don't know what you call your math problems. What do we call those things? Theorem. Anything like that. I did very bad in math. The only D I ever got in school was in math, Mr. Drum at Powers, sophomore year, and that made me mad. So, but I can't put that in front of you right now and say, look at 2 plus 2 equals this. I can't do that. But the one thing I can tell you is that whenever I experience those moments of fear, because I say, I trust in you, Lord, I believe in you, Lord, I can tell you I find some peace. I find some peace that is beyond understanding. I've heard those stories where all of a sudden a rush of peace. I've heard those stories, where there's a rush of peace. Not because we just want to follow the teaching. We want to follow the good morals. It's because that belief changes and transforms and fills us. What does Jesus say at the end of this gospel? Oh, my goodness. He says, hey, believe, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to have life. You're going to have life in my name. Wow. I mean, it's a transformed life. It's a changed life. I mean, that's what it's all about. I've shared this before, but again, I don't remember, so I'm going to share it again. We're going to put something up on the monitor right here, and you're going to say, oh, my goodness. You can squint a little bit, but I told Colleen I wanted to put this on one screen. I'm going to read it, okay? And there's little copies of this that you can grab and take it home with you, all right? But it's a beautiful poem, and it's called One Solitary Life. And you know what? It makes me think. I remember when I saw this for the first time, it made me step back and just say, there is something to this man. He's more than just a man. He's got to be God. Because I'm telling you, the things that he did, the things that he accomplished, all those things, it changed this world. So listen to these words. He was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman. He grew up still in another village where he worked in a carpenter's shop until he was 30. Then for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family or he owned a house. He didn't go to college. He never visited a big city. He never traveled more than 200 miles from the place where he was born. He did none of these things one usually associates with greatness. He had no credentials but himself. He was only 33 when the tide of public opinion turned against him. His friends ran away. He was turned over to his enemies and went through the mockery of a trial. He was nailed to a cross between 2 thieves. While he was dying, his executioners gambled for his clothing, the only property he had on earth. When he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed tomb, a borrowed grave, through the pity of a friend. 20 centuries have come and gone, and today he is a central figure of the human race and the leader of humankind's progress. All the armies that have ever marched, all the navies that have ever sailed, all the parliaments that have ever sat, all the kings that have ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of humankind on earth as much as this one solitary life. I ask you to think of another person, human being that's walked this earth. Fact is, Jesus is real. Jesus as a man is real. But Jesus as God is real also. Just think about that. Today, Teresa and Oliver, you're coming and you're saying, we believe, and we want to share this with Oliver. As much as today is about him, and I believe it is, it's also about the two of you. I think it's a day that you step back and you say to yourselves, what do we believe? Because I can tell you what you're sharing with him today, he's going to look to you to be his greatest examples of life and faith. What you have, you will give to him. What you don't have, you can't give. So today is a challenge. You know, it's a challenge to say, we got to keep this going because we want him to have this life of faith. So I encourage you to step back and look in the mirror occasionally and say, where am I at? What do I want to give to him? Godparents, same thing. I know you're sitting here thinking, you know what, we were chosen because we're going to look best in the pictures, okay? It's a little bit more than that today. You know, you can't share what you don't have. So we step back today and even say the same thing. With that in mind, I'd like to invite Oliver and Teresa and Ted and Victoria to come forward as we will begin to profess our faith.